Welcome to Buffalo Gameday Recap. I'm Thad Brown along with AJ Feldman. And AJ, so last week I picked the Dolphins to win by a touchdown, and the Bills won, and they lost by 28 points. This week I picked the Bills to win by 28 points, and the Bills basically lost by a touchdown. So I think lesson one is my prediction is not to be trusted for the maybe the duration of the season. We'll see. But I mean, as Dawson Knox said later, everybody's good in this league. And I think the Bills found out the hard way that, you don't show up for a game, no matter how well you've been playing, you will get picked off.
I mean, you're only about 35 points off each week, which, it does have some room for improvement. I will say that.
Just a little. All right, let's talk about this game. I mean, number one for me, and I know the injuries were probably on defense, the number one reason the Bills lost. Because if you have all those players in the game, they probably win. But the number one part of this game where there was failure, I think, is clearly the offense. And after 3 weeks where they did almost whatever they wanted to do, especially last week against Miami, there was almost nothing in this game. Number one, the run game was non-existent. I mean, James Cook did Reggie Bush in this game and went 5 for -4. But more than that, I think what happened is, or one of the things that happened, they say in the NFL it takes 4 weeks of game film before a team is really comfortable. Like when you get to week 10, teams will look back 4 games. They're not going to go back to the beginning of the season because you're different. So early in the year, weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, you don't have that full look. This was the first game where there was a full look. And I think Jacksonville had some answers for what the Bills were doing with some of the short passing game, the idea of let's get it out quick and we'll just keep the ball moving down the field. The other reason I thought that played into Jacksonville's strength, the Jags seemed like a great tackling team. So whenever the Bills tried to go short, yeah, they might throw for 4 yards, but against Miami, some of the 4s went for 10. In this game, the 4s were all 4, or they were 2. So that's where I start with. Give me your initial take on the first couple of things where you're like, that's where it went wrong for Buffalo in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you come out and you punt your first 4 possessions on offense. That's just a dead giveaway that things are going wrong. And you talk about the defensive injuries. I think part of the reason why the defense kind of wore down at the end was, of course, the time of possession, the plays on the field. After Jacksonville scored that the touchdown, kind of the back-breaking touchdown, it was the
18-7 one with ETN. I'm assuming the first ETN touchdown.
Yeah, with ETN, the plays at that point were 73 plays for the Jaguars. And looking for the stat right now, I believe it was 40 for the Bills. Yeah, 73-40. So the Bills were just on the field all day long. So many injuries. Matt Milano, DaQuan Jones, they left in the first quarter, didn't return. Then you go to the guys that came in and out. It was, obviously taking a toll on them. It was just tough for the Bills to hang with the Jaguars. The Bills couldn't get a run game going. They couldn't develop secondary options. Once again, it was just Stephon Diggs. Honestly, they barely even had first options. It really wasn't even the Stephon Diggs show until that one drive. They just couldn't get a rhythm in offense. The team talked about that. They couldn't get into a rhythm. They couldn't get momentum going. Whether or not it is traveling over from London, traveling late versus early, whatever the reason was, they just didn't have it early in this game.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the secondary options thing because Gabe Davis's numbers, I haven't seen what the final numbers are, but they're going to look nice thanks to those last 2 drives where the Bills, threw 2 touchdowns on the board. Is not really in garbage time, but certainly in Jacksonville was okay giving up stuff time. And earlier in the fourth quarter, I looked at it myself. Before those last 2 drives, I think Gabe Davis was 3 for 29. No one other than Stephon Diggs had more than 2 catches, and there was just no impact in the game. I mean, did Dalton Kincaid play in this game? I don't remember him being on the field hardly at all. So the things that the offense, I think we've been a little critical of with the secondary options, and that might be it so far, coming into this game, that continued to be an issue. And then the run game went away. So when it really is Diggs or nothing, you see what happens. Now, I think some of this too is there's an inexplicable reason why Josh Allen cannot figure the Jaguars out. It's almost like he has a finite amount of magic to use on Florida teams and just spends it all on the Dolphins and then has nothing left for the Jaguars. I got nothing else beyond that. I mean, there were some issues on the field, but some of it was, how the heck did this happen?
It might be a green versus not green thing this season is what I'm picking up.
Well, Jacksonville doesn't have green. That's teal, dude.
It's greenish if you want to. I mean,
and their colors are closer to Miami's colors than they are to the Jets colors. So we can't play the color game. I'll let you workshop that one for next week. But I kind of sprung that out of you.
They're green adjacent. They're more green than the Dolphins. But yeah, so far, the Bills had this problem going into the season. They had Stephon Diggs. They kind of had Gabe Davis. The jury was still out on them. They bring in Deontay Hardy. They bring in Dalton Cade in the first round. They bring in Trent Sherfield. They bring in all these guys, Khalil Shakir trying to rise up. So far this season, they've played 5 games. No player other than Stephon Diggs or Gabe Davis has had 3 catches and 45 yards in the same exact game. They have 2 guys who can be consistent targets for them. Today, Deontay Hardy had 2 for 62. Dalton Kincaid's had a couple games where he catches like 9 balls for 12 yards. And they just can't have third options, sometimes even secondary options. It's a problem, especially when, like you said, now the book is a little more. They're going to try and, take the small stuff, work the small stuff, try and break something off. They didn't work it down the field too much other than a couple plays, and the offense really just couldn't get anything going.
By the time they were working it down the field, it was too late.
Mm-hmm.
All right, on defense in this game, I want to start with the guys who played well, because for a long period of time, it was 11-0, and you felt like the Bills have like nobody on defense left to play. They're like pulling people out of the stands, basically, and yet they're still in the game. It was 11-7 at halftime, and it wasn't. Some of it was Jacksonville self-inflicted. In the first half, they had the failure out of the timeout on third down. They had an illegal downfield penalty that killed the drive. They had in the second half a bad snap that basically killed the drive. So some of it was they're getting some help from the other team being bad, but AJ Epinesa had 2 sacks and a forced fumble, took away points by himself. Dane Jackson in the first half knocked away what should have been a touchdown to Evan Ingram, took away points there. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Kyer Elam and Jackson played great, but there were plenty of snaps where Trevor Lawrence sat in the pocket for an excessive amount of time to where I got to figure the coverage is doing something right down the field. Dorian Williams made a couple plays. Terrell Dotson late in the game was impactful. So the guys who played weren't that bad. And I really thought this was going to be an example of, a good team in the Bills using backups to beat the starters for another talented team who's not good in Jacksonville. I think at the end they ran out of gas, but overall, I thought the defense played well, largely considering the circumstances.
Yeah, especially you look at the raw numbers. They're not great for the Bills. Trevor Lawrence, 315 yards. Travis Etienne, 136. But you can't put this fault on the defense. They did everything they could, especially with the guys that were out going into this game. Obviously, Trey White, Greg Rousseau, Shaq Lawson. Then you lose DaQuan Jones, and you lose Matt Milano. That's 4 of, if not maybe your 4 best players on defense, depending on how you want to stack them up. And they, like you said, they held their own. AJ Epinesa turning into a great season so far this year, 2 sacks. Von Miller did come back, but he was fairly non-existent, had 1 tackle, didn't really impact the quarterback as much, didn't play at all, if any, in the second half because of his pitch count. You really have to give it to the defense. They did all they could. The offense just did not put them in a position to succeed over and over again. They got turnovers where it mattered. They forced 2 fumbles, prevented 2 scoring drives, probably 2 field goals. Defense did all they could. Cornerbacks, Kyer Elam got basically benched for Jamarcus Ingram late in the game. Carl Jones was here in the station. He's not a big fan of Kyer's game. So that's, you go into bust category perhaps, but defense did all they could.
Elam is already in bust category. He's trying to get himself out of there.
He had a chance. He had his chance today.
And didn't take advantage of it,
No.
and again, I will say I thought there were some snaps that were good, but with Elam specifically, I saw plenty of snaps where I have big questions as well. But you saw what happened. I mean, look, you take Matt Milano and Tre'Davious White off the field. Those guys are all pros right off the bat. Then DaQuan Jones, for my money, has been one of the best, maybe if the best defensive lineman for this team. You do that to any team, they're not going to be able to function. And at the end of the day, they did not. You have Micah Hyde on the number 1 receiver. I mean, Hyde's a great player, but he's not a lockdown corner, so putting him out there on a third down where you need a stop to get off the field to have a chance to win the game, that is not plan A or probably even plan B or C. So this is where the Bills are at, and now going forward, let's move it off this game a little bit. Is this still a Super Bowl contending team? Because I think you can make the argument, despite 48 points last week against Miami, the defense was the better side of the ball, or certainly the more trustworthy side, because you got new pieces, young pieces on offense. And now, Sean McDermott said it doesn't look good for DaQuan Jones or Matt Milano. If you take, let's say those 2 guys are out for the season, and I don't think it's going to be that, although it could be, but let's just say that you're now saying to the Bills, we're going to go all 3 levels of defense, and we're going to take an elite player or a close to elite player away from all of them. What does that leave you with? They got good depth. I think they'll be okay, but is that team shutting down Kansas City or the Eagles in the playoffs or the Niners even with Brock Purdy? I don't think so.
And the buzz, or not the buzz, the feel around Matt Milano is this is not a good injury. This is potentially long term. Jordan Poyer mentioned that he had just heard about Matt Milano, and it was depressing and things like that. He didn't say what exactly I heard about him, but it wasn't good. Adam Schefter's reported he's going to be out indefinitely. I don't know what that means. If that's just based on what we heard at the press conference, it kind of seems like more he's just extrapolating off of that. No exact report on there, but it does not seem like Matt Milano will be back anytime soon. Maybe if at all this season. And like you said, you have to wonder. I had this thought as these injuries started piling up. Is the end of that third quarter from the Miami Dolphins game going to be as the lights go in and out at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium?
I got enough to finish this up. Yeah, we're okay.
All right. Is that end of that third quarter going to be the peak of this Bills season? Because you lose all of that, like you mentioned, it's just tough to bounce back. And Terrell Bernard's been good, but now when you don't have Matt Milano standing next to you, that middle of the field now goes from a strength to a massive weakness. You have to look at potentially adding in cornerbacks. Christian Benford's going to come back, but you have to talk about potentially adding linebackers. Can Terrell Dodson or Dorian Williams step into that Matt Milano role? I'm not counting on it. Poona Ford finally has to step up to what he was kind of hoped for when this offseason signing was. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of holes, and there's still a lot of time to go until the playoffs.
Yeah. And that's the bottom line with this too. I think sitting here right now, you and I would both look at this team and say, still really good. I mean, might very well win the division, could win multiple playoff games, and it wouldn't stun us to see them go to a Super Bowl. But this is not a team that you would suddenly pick if the injuries are this long term. But, they have younger guys on offense. There's certainly room to get better on offense. They already have the quarterback. So when you start with that, that's obviously a quality base. And there's opportunity for this team, to find ways to be at a Super Bowl level. I mean, the injuries to the interior defensive linemen, linebackers, and corners look bad, but the Bills might have a really good group of defensive ends all of a sudden when you put healthy Von Miller with Leonard Floyd, with improved Greg Rousseau, with improved AJ Epinesa. Perhaps the defense can be good enough to we'll have so many edge rushers that we're going to overwhelm you, and then we can make up for whatever deficiencies we have around. And then on top of that, if our offense gets better and can get a little more consistent, and again, this is one bad game after three good ones, so even calling the offense not consistent, might not be fair. There is still a path, but the path got a lot more difficult today.
Yeah, they have the edge rushers. Now you just have to think basically every drive, either they have to pressure them enough where the defense, doesn't have to hold up forever, or they have to get a sack and get beyond schedule, because the other layers of the defense is just really battered right now. And there's still a lot of time left in the season where, either guys can come back, or, there's a lot of aging players on that defense where can they hold up with all of this pressure on them now to play all these snaps going forward?
Frustrating loss too, because this Jags team, and I know they're 3-2, same as the Bills, but they to me look like you could see why they struggled early in the season. Just so many mental mistakes, so many things that, for a team of that caliber, at least with the players you look at on the field, when you assemble the talent, you think they should be better, and they were not. And this game was here for the Bills to steal, so many different ways. Obviously, if there's guys healthy, that would have made a difference. But like we started this with, the offense had plenty of chances, just didn't take advantage. So this one's going to hurt. Bills come home, take on the Giants next week. That needs to be a win. I think there's a good chance it will be. The question now is, how long does this stick? We've had so many seasons where the Bills are one game out of the 1 seed or could be close to this. And, a dumb loss to a team like the Jaguars hurts. Will this be that loss?
And we talk about these injuries. We have to mention the turf where, Taron Johnson certainly has some things to say.
Yeah. And thanks for bringing that up. Taron Johnson afterward, he thought the turf was terrible. Doesn't understand why they play on it. And I talked about this, Friday and Saturday, or Saturday and Sunday on Buffalo Kickoff Live. They have grass here. And I thought they'd be playing on grass because that's what soccer teams do, especially in England. But no, they rolled the grass out. They played on turf. It's a new turf. Most of the guys said they didn't hate it, thought it was okay. But Taron Johnson just disintegrated this turf, said it was terrible. They shouldn't have to play on it. And this is also part of the general player movement to not play on turf, which makes a lot of sense and is gaining steam. Today only added to that. It wasn't just the Bills. The Jags had injuries too. So, I think if you gave these guys, both players, both rosters, truth serum, they would have had very, very similar comments to Taron Johnson. Taron was frustrated because he got his own knee hurt, thought it was bad, said, thank God I'm okay. but then, laid into it and said there's no reason they should be playing on it. And I get it. I understand where the players are coming from.
Yeah, and Ryan O'Halloran from the Buffalo News cited an anonymous Bills veteran saying, quote, "It was like playing on effing cement." So
it wasn't soft. Yeah, I mean, I've been on enough turfs myself, not playing, but walking. This was not a friendly surface. It wasn't terrible. I've going back to like the old days in when it was Rich Stadium and that was legitimately cement. It wasn't that, but it wasn't a great turf, that's for sure.
No, and you make this whole big deal about the international games. You go abroad, it's this whole big undertaking. You would like to see, from what it sounds like, them playing on not a great turf.
And speaking of international games, I know there's some talk about whether London being here was a factor. Why didn't the Bills travel early? Pretty sure most teams who come out to London come out on the Thursday night and the Friday. So that's what everybody does. I'm sure it had an effect, because it's different. But, most of the guys said, let's not make an excuse out of it. And I think that would be the wrong thing to do. I think if you don't show up ready to go, that's on you, not on where the game is. Mitch Moore said our job is to show up and play no matter where they tell us to play. So I'm not going to put this on London as an excuse. Was it a factor? Maybe, but it's a factor that they had months to prepare for. If they weren't ready, that's on the Bills.
Yeah, if you want to make an argument over the fact that, the Jags were there the Jags were there for 2 weeks, they just came. That's one thing, even though, NFL players are creatures of habit. So they had to do all this weird stuff being in London for too long. But if you want to try and make an argument over getting there on Monday versus getting there on Thursday, I think that's just, hindsight being 2020 after a slow start. You really can't. Nobody was saying this that much on Friday and Saturday before the game was played.
When everybody thought the Bills had the right plan, and they very well may still have, and they just didn't play well against, a Jags team that I think defensively played better than we expected. All right, like we said, Giants at home for the Bills next week. It's a Sunday night game. The return of Brian Dable. I'm sure we'll talk about that about 85 times between now and then. For AJ Feldman, I'm Thad Brown. Thanks for watching and listening to Buffalo Game Day Recap. You can find us every single week after every single game at RochesterFirst.com and wherever you can find your podcast. I will see you from London, back in the States.
How was your trip? We got to let the people know.
We're going to do that right now at the end.
Yeah, let's do it.
It was didn't get a lot of fun time. Like Friday was a big long work day. Saturday did go to the soccer game at Fulham, the football game, and seeing Craven Cottage, oldest team in London. It was fun. One stands is like the original stands. AJ, the seats I sat in were like blocks of wood. It was out of medieval times. I'm not kidding you. But what an experience. It was awesome. The home team won 3-1. So we had goals. We had excitement. I won some money. So it was an all-around great guy. Had shepherd's pie with steak, had a pint. Just a super experience. And, being in London, it's just last night we're walking around and the weather's really nice here, like it's been in Western New York the last week or so. And just saying I was thinking to myself, I'm in London and I'm just hanging out on a Saturday night and it's awesome. So that part was really fun, but a lot of work. It is a work trip, and I will be looking forward to getting back home soon enough.
I appreciate the caveat. Oh, it's a work trip. I heard a lot of fun, and I'm glad you had fun. It was your birthday, too, so happy birthday.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Okay, we're really wrapping it up this time. For AJ Feldman, I'm Thad Brown. Thanks for watching and listening to Buffalo Game Day Recap.